Alright, so I'm going to talk a little bit about progressivism in this video, and in particular I'm going to discuss two different definitions of progressivism. The first definition is the broader definition, and the second definition is political progressivism. And what I'm really going to zero in on is how the political progressives often attempt to usurp the broader definition of progressivism, and in doing so they ultimately contradict themselves. So first, let's kind of just start with definitions. So the first definition, the broader definition of progressivism, can be defined as adapting to change in real time in order to progress, in order to thrive, right? And what this implies is that you are adapting to changes in your environment in order to address short-term issues and long-term issues, right? You're going to have some things that pop up that you have to address now, and you're going to see the development of issues in the long term that you have to address now as well. So an example of this, a simple example, let's say that you look at the rising CO2 levels and you see that eating animal products isn't great for the environment. It's not great for climate change, and therefore you're going to adopt a plant-dominant diet, right? You're not going to completely become a vegan, but you're going to eat less animals and eat more plants. And in doing so, you are attempting to progress. You're attempting to address a long-term issue in order to survive, right? In order to thrive, even. So this works for a little while, but let's say a drought comes along, and that drought creates a shortage of plant foods, right? All of a sudden, there's not so many oats to go around. There's not so much, vegetables and fruits to go around. What are you going to do? Are you going to starve, or are you going to adapt? You're going to adapt. In order to progress, you're going to adapt to the changes that the environment has placed on you. So you're going to eat more animal products for the meantime in order to survive. Very simple, right? This is being progressive. You're going to realize that despite the fact that eating animal products is bad for the environment in the long term, you're not going to get to that long term if you don't eat today. So you're going to address the short-term issue, the immediate issue, in order to get back to a place where you can eat plant products, right, when the rain comes back. So let's kind of shift over to the other definition, the political definition of progressivism. And I'm going to read a definition from, I think, Google's AI. Okay, this is a simple definition, but it says that progressivism is a political philosophy and reform movement that advocates for social progress through government action and social reform. Okay, now, how is it that this definition contradicts the broader definition? Well, it contradicts the broader definition if and when a political progressive uses government action to go about bringing their social reform into the society. Why is this? Well, what is a government? Government creates laws, and those laws are designed to be enforced today and tomorrow and into the perhaps indefinite future, right? So let's say that in order to protect the environment, a government makes a law that says 90% of the calories that people eat must be sourced from plant foods, right? So only 10% of the foods you're allowed to eat are coming from animals for sources now. What happens when that drought comes along? Well, all of a sudden, that drought makes that law obsolete, right? All of a sudden, in order to progress, you have to get rid of that law, or you have to break that law, right? In other words, any time that you use government to enact a law that assumes you know what is best for people tomorrow is an example of regressivism, okay? You are not being progressive by assuming you know what's best for people tomorrow. So, in a roundabout way, the only true progressivism, political progressivism, is libertarianism. Instead of using the government to control people tomorrow, and in doing so, assuming you know what's best for people tomorrow, you have to control your own behaviors today and tomorrow and the next day in order to truly enact your progressive values. And beyond that, if you are a true progressive, you also have to break the laws that you find problematic, right? Otherwise, people are not going to see that these laws are outdated. A simple example of this is the marijuana movement, right? People have been smoking weed forever, right? And it has been illegal largely in the United States up until recently, right? We've had this legalization movement that I promise you wouldn't have occurred if people hadn't broken that law, that if people hadn't smoked weed when it was illegal. In other words, true progressivism, again, is libertarianism. True progressivism is using the free market, and not just the economic free market, but the social free market, to be the example you want to see, to be the example you believe in, to behave in the way you deem is necessary for progress. And that goes and that means you may have to challenge social constructs. That means you may have to break laws, right? So, again, if you are a progressive who assumes that what is right today for everybody will be right tomorrow, you are actually behaving regressively if you go so far as to put your progressive values today into laws that control people tomorrow. Understand that the government is ultimately a creation of the free market. When we compartmentalize governments and free markets, we fail to realize that the government is actually just an organization of people, perhaps a majority of people, who vote for a democratically elect these politicians who then make laws, right? If we assume that the majority today knows what's right for everybody tomorrow, we're getting into a dangerous place. It's majority rule, right? And oftentimes, what's right today is right today, but it's not right tomorrow or in 4 years, for example. So, again, true progressivism is libertarianism. If you, as a progressive, believe in progress, then you agree that we have to adapt. And that means, and governments, laws, they keep us from adapting because laws restrict adaptation. Right? So, thanks for watching.